Imagine building a company so successful that it challenges giants like Toyota, Ford, and General Motors. Now imagine doing it after your factories were bombed. Your business was destroyed. An earthquake wiped out what was left. And your first major customer rejected the product you spent years creating. Most people would have quit after the first disaster. Soichiro Honda did something different. Every time life knocked him down, he came back with an even bigger idea. The little boy who once ran barefoot through a dusty village just to catch a glimpse of a passing automobile would one day build one of the largest automotive companies on Earth. But what makes this story truly remarkable isn't the billions of dollars. It's how every failure became the blueprint for his next success. Because Honda wasn't built by luck. It was built by a man who refused to stop learning. And that journey didn't begin inside a factory. It began on a dusty road in rural Japan, where a curious little boy chased a passing automobile until it disappeared beyond the horizon. Out of breath, he knelt beside the fresh tire tracks, touched the drops of engine oil left on the ground, and smiled. That boy was Soichiro Honda. This is the story of how a poor boy built Honda. For Apple, it was a garage. For Amazon, it was an online bookstore. But for Honda, it began on a dusty road in rural Japan. More than a century ago, a young boy watched a strange machine roll through his village. It was noisy, covered in dust, and unlike anything he had ever seen before. While everyone else stood there in amazement, the boy chased it until it disappeared beyond the horizon. Out of breath, he knelt beside the fresh tire tracks, touched the drops of engine oil left on the ground, and quietly smiled. Years later, he would say that the smell of gasoline was the sweetest smell he had ever known. To everyone else, it was just fuel. To him, it smelled like the future. That boy was Soichiro Honda. Born in 1906 in the small village of Komio, Honda grew up in a family that had very little money but an endless supply of hard work. His father repaired bicycles and worked as a local blacksmith, while his mother spent long hours weaving cloth to help feed the family. Their home wasn't filled with luxury, but it was filled with tools, broken machines, and endless opportunities to learn. Instead of spending his childhood playing games, Soichiro spent most of his time watching his father repair bicycles. He wasn't fascinated by the finished product. He was fascinated by the process. Every broken chain, bent wheel, and loose bolt raised a question in his mind. He wanted to know why things broke and how they could be made better. That curiosity separated him from almost everyone around him. School never did. Teachers often believed he wasn't a bright student because he struggled to memorize lessons and rarely showed interest in textbooks. But Honda wasn't lazy. His mind simply worked differently. He didn't enjoy memorizing information. He wanted to understand how things actually worked. While others searched for the right answers, Honda searched for better questions. Course of his life. Carrying almost no money and leaving behind the only home he had ever known, he boarded a train to Tokyo. It was Japan's fastest-growing city and the center of a new industry that fascinated him, automobiles. He arrived with no connections, no experience, and no guarantee of success. The only thing he possessed was an obsession with machines. After weeks of searching, Honda found work at a small automobile repair shop called Art Shokai. The reality, however, was disappointing. Instead of repairing engines, he swept floors, carried heavy equipment, cleaned the workshop, and ran errands for senior mechanics. Many people would have considered the job beneath them. Honda considered it the perfect opportunity. Whenever experienced mechanics opened an engine, he silently watched every movement. He studied how they diagnosed problems, how they repaired damaged parts, and how every component worked together. Every day inside that workshop became another lesson, and every lesson brought him one step closer to his dream. Within a few years, the teenager who had arrived as a cleaner had become one of the workshop's most skilled mechanics. Yet the more he learned, the more restless he became. Repairing machines was no longer enough. He didn't want to spend his life fixing other people's inventions. Motor racing quickly became Honda's greatest teacher. While most people watched races for excitement, he watched them for answers. Every engine pushed to its limit exposed a hidden weakness. Every broken part revealed a design flaw. To Honda, winning was satisfying, but losing was far more valuable because failure always came with a lesson. Then, one race changed everything. A horrific crash left him badly injured and ended his hopes of becoming a professional driver. For weeks, he lay recovering, wondering what came next. experience. Honda made the opposite decision. If he couldn't become the greatest driver, he would become the engineer who built the greatest machines. It was a turning point that completely changed his life's direction. Soon, his attention shifted to a tiny engine component called the piston ring. It was a small piece of metal that most people ignored, yet it played a crucial role in an engine's performance. Honda believed he could design a better one, even though he had never built one before. With little money and no formal engineering education, he began experimenting inside a small workshop, convinced that persistence could overcome inexperience. Reality was far harsher than he expected. Prototype after prototype failed. Some cracked under pressure. Others wore out too quickly. Many couldn't even pass basic performance tests. Months of work disappeared with every unsuccessful design. Friends questioned his judgment, and experienced engineers dismissed his idea as unrealistic. But Honda refused to see failure as proof that he should stop. To him, every failed attempt simply eliminated another wrong answer. Eventually, believing he had created a product worthy of Japan's biggest automaker, Honda presented his piston rings to Toyota. The answer was devastating. Toyota rejected them. Its engineers explained that the quality simply wasn't good enough for production. It was the opportunity Honda had dreamed about for years, and it disappeared in a single meeting. That rejection became one of the most important moments of his life. Instead of arguing or making excuses, Honda admitted something that many entrepreneurs struggle to accept. He wasn't good enough yet. So he went back to learning. He studied metallurgy, researched manufacturing techniques, and spent countless hours understanding why his designs had failed. Rather than protecting his pride, he improved his knowledge in piston ring. This time, they accepted it. For the first time, Honda had proven that determination alone wasn't enough. Real success came from combining persistence with the willingness to keep learning. But just as his future finally seemed secure, history intervened. World War II pushed Japan into chaos. Factories abandoned innovation and focused entirely on military production. Raw materials became scarce, skilled workers disappeared, and manufacturing almost came to a standstill. Before Honda could fully expand his business, bombing raids destroyed much of his factory. Then, shortly after the war, a powerful earthquake damaged what remained. Years of sacrifice disappeared within moments. Most people would have accepted defeat. Honda didn't. He sold the remains of his piston ring business to Toyota, not because he had lost hope, but because he understood that clinging to the past would never create a better future. As Japan slowly began rebuilding after the war, he noticed thousands of unused military engines sitting in storage. To everyone else, they were leftovers from a painful chapter in history. Honda saw the beginning of a new one. With remarkable creativity, he attached those small engines to ordinary bicycles. The result wasn't beautiful or luxurious, but it solved a problem millions of people faced every day. In a country struggling with fuel shortages and damaged infrastructure, affordable transportation wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Demand exploded almost overnight. What began as a simple idea soon became something much bigger. In 1948, Soichiro Honda founded Honda Motor Company, believing that great businesses aren't built by chasing money. They're built by solving problems. He had survived failure, rejection, war, and disaster. Now, he was ready to challenge the world. By the late 1950s, Honda had become one of Japan's leading motorcycle manufacturers. Honda had built a stable business. Most entrepreneurs would have focused on protecting that success. Honda had something else in mind. He believed that if his machines were truly world-class, they should prove themselves in the toughest market on Earth. That market was America. In 1959, Honda opened its first office in Los Angeles. It was a bold move, but almost everyone thought it was a mistake. American roads were dominated by powerful motorcycles from Harley-Davidson, while the country's automobile industry was controlled by giants like Ford and General Motors. Compared to them, Honda looked like a small foreign company with little chance of surviving. At first, the critics seemed right. The motorcycles that performed perfectly in Japan struggled on American highways. They overheated during long rides, suffered mechanical problems, and failed to impress customers. Sales were disappointing, and the company's savings began disappearing at an alarming rate. After years of hard work, Honda once again stood on the edge of failure. But instead of blaming the market, the customers, or bad luck, Honda asked the same question that had guided him since childhood. What can we do better? That simple question changed everything. Honda's engineers redesigned their motorcycles for American conditions, making them stronger, more reliable, and better suited for long-distance riding. At the same time, they noticed something unexpected. A small motorcycle called the Super Cub was quietly attracting attention. It wasn't fast, powerful, or expensive. It was lightweight, dependable, affordable, and incredibly easy to ride. Honda realized people weren't searching for the biggest motorcycle. They were searching for the one that fit their everyday lives. To change public perception, the company launched a campaign that would become legendary. Cycles as symbols of rebellion. Honda presented them as practical vehicles for students, families, teachers, and office workers. The message completely transformed the American motorcycle market. Millions of people who had never considered owning a motorcycle suddenly wanted one. Honda didn't just compete with existing brands. It created an entirely new generation of customers. With motorcycles now firmly established, Soichiro Honda set his sights on an even greater challenge. Automobiles. Industry experts warned that entering the car business was far too risky. The competition was fierce, the investment was enormous, and one mistake could destroy everything Honda had built. But throughout his life, Honda had learned that the biggest opportunities usually appeared disguised as impossible dreams. The journey wasn't easy. Early models faced engineering challenges, production problems, and constant criticism. Yet Honda never viewed setbacks as reasons to quit. Every problem became another opportunity to improve. That philosophy proved invaluable when the global oil crisis struck during the 1970s. As fuel prices soared, drivers desperately needed smaller and more efficient cars. While many manufacturers scrambled to adapt, Honda was already prepared. Its fuel-efficient vehicles and revolutionary CVCC engine offered exactly what the world needed, turning the company into one of the fastest-growing automobile manufacturers on the planet. Over the following decades, Honda expanded far beyond motorcycles and cars. The company built racing machines, aircraft, marine engines, power equipment, robotics, and advanced technologies used in millions of homes and businesses around the world. Yet despite becoming a global engineering giant, one principle never changed. Inside Honda, success was never considered the finish line. Every product could be improved. Every challenge could become an opportunity. Honda's story continues to inspire people more than a century after his birth. He wasn't born into wealth. He didn't inherit a famous company or graduate from a prestigious university. He began with nothing except curiosity, determination, and the courage to keep learning when others gave up. The boy who once chased a single automobile through a quiet village never stopped chasing a better future. And because he refused to accept failure as the end of the journey, his name eventually became one of the most trusted brands in the world. His greatest invention wasn't a motorcycle or a car. It was a mindset, the belief that every problem has a solution. Every setback hides a lesson. And every ordinary person has the power to build something extraordinary. If they never stop asking one simple question, how can I make this better? That question built Honda. And one day, it might build your future too.